Rev up your engine! Now, if you wonder why a lot of people really swear by their Tundra trucks, here's a 2010 truck in Massachusetts, spent its whole life in Massachusetts, and has over 200,000 miles on it. Yet, for all intents and purposes, it almost looks like a brand new truck. I'm talking about the salt of Massachusetts, too. The chrome isn't even bad. It's a four-wheel drive, got a nice back seat in it. Yes, and a tiny bit of wood grain. No wood grain anywhere else, just these tiny little pieces and on the shifter. Leather seats are still in good condition. Now you expect this on the driver's side, and that always happens. People getting in and out, they always rub this through and it tears a little here. You can put nice seat covers in, you can even get reupholstered. You could dye it and get that fixed if you really wanted to. Check it out, it's got 202,964 miles on it. Does the engine burn oil? No, shit's perfectly fine, even though he's never touched the fluid. He's the original owner. He says it's probably too late now, but it still shit's perfectly fine. Because when you get under the hood, you see the main reason people buy these things. Big old V8. It's the iForce 5.7 liter V8. And as you can see, it ain't got no stinking timing belt. It's got a timing chain. Generally, they last forever. The timing belts you're supposed to change every 100,000 miles. Relatively expensive. These have timing chains. I've never seen a timing chain ever break on one of these things. Like I say, this thing doesn't burn any oil. The only real big deal was he had to pay to replace the radiator. The plastic radiator finally broke and he had to replace that a few years ago. And if you know anything about these V8 engines this setup, it had that stupid evap problem with the pump on the engine, but he got that fixed under warranty by Toyota. They fixed it free, no questions asked, and it's never come back after 200,000 miles. It was a design flaw. They almost all break. Once you fix it, they don't break again. And he got it fixed under warranty, so he didn't care. ABS brakes, he said, have always worked. The charging system has always worked. You can see he's replaced the battery. It's got an AutoZone Duralast. The press is original, as is the alternator. Now you see there's corrosion on the aluminum. That's just what happens here in Massachusetts. That's superficial corrosion. Now, I asked this guy, I said, this thing is so clean, what do you do, hide it? He says, no, I drive it every day. Summer, winter. If it can handle the salt on the road in Massachusetts and still look this good, shows you how solid built they are. This Tundra isn't like some of the early ones. They got frame rot. As you can see, look at this frame. Man, it's still excellent, solid as can be, even though it's been in Massachusetts all these years. New enough, you can turn the traction control on or off. You can do the transmission for towing and hauling. And the four-wheel drive system is electronic. You can set it to two-wheel, four-wheel high, or four-wheel low, which you have to push in. Yes, not my favorite mechanical four-wheel drive like I showed in an earlier Toyota Sequoia. It was much older than this, it was mechanical, but still, it's Toyota, it's electronic, it's never broken on a guy. They're pretty well-designed four-wheel drive systems. Now, as you can see, when we start it up, of course it starts because it's a Toyota. He added the stereo system on it, didn't come with this, because he wanted a backup camera. So now I can see when he's backing up. It was built in San Antonio. There it is. Manufacturing Texas Incorporated. If you want the whole history, Toyota never made any bigger trucks. Then they decided to get bigger and they made the T100. And that was either made in Japan or assembled in Indiana, where the forklift truck factory used to be. But they were only V6 and Americans are like, that's not big enough. So then in Indiana, they started putting together the big old V8 Tundras. Instead of calling them T100, they called them Tundra. They kept the T and they got rid of the 100. You can tow a lot with these things, but just realize it's a big, heavy vehicle with a big V8 engine. You can make it 2- or 4-wheel drive. The gas hogs. He said he usually gets about 13 miles a gallon. And if he just goes on a highway, he might get 14 miles a gallon. And that's not pulling or towing anything. They're strong, reliable trucks. You're just going to have to spend money on gasoline. Now, with over 200,000 miles, this thing obviously is held up. And yeah, he's put a lot of gasoline in it. There's no arguing that. But it is a Toyota. And it runs perfectly fine on regular gas. You don't have to run any fancy gasoline. You can buy the cheapest gas you get your hands on. The thing will run perfectly fine. Massive brakes, front and rear. They stop fine too. To show you something about the quality of Toyotas, we'll open the back. The Tundra mat is still here, and it's not ripped or torn. Yeah, birds have pooped all over it, but Even the mat they throw in these things are well made. You want to keep it all nice inside, you can do like you did. You can go with rhino linings. They do a good job. Look how well this one's held up. Let's close the hood, take it for a ride. He drove here on the highway. He got better than 14 miles a gallon. He got 14.4 miles a gallon driving on the highway here. Going 55, 60. Four-wheel drive's got no problems going over the big lump at the end of the driveway. And for a truck, it's got a good ride. All the weight does add to a better ride. You go over bumps better. And yeah, you get a little bounce here and there, but the ride is quite comfortable. As you're waiting to go out, a few cars are coming. It's got plenty enough power to take off. You step on the gas, away it goes. This engine's got power up the wazoo. And that's why I like this V8 engine. And I'm not a fan of the new Tundras with a turbo V6. Even with Toyota, I'd kind of wonder about going from a strong V8 that can run forever to a V6. And look, they've had turbo problems and other problems already. I would personally not buy one. I would want an older one like this that's got a V8 engine. Got plenty of horsepower, torque, passing, and has a history of extreme long life. I have seen these things with 500,000 miles on them tow over 15,000 pounds. Now, they don't rate them for that, but they can pull a lot more than what they're rated for. Now, if this was mine, but it isn't, I'd be driving it in these fields here, seeing how it would fly through the furrows. But it's somebody else's, so I'll leave that to him if he wants to. But then again, he lives in Massachusetts, and I doubt if this thing's ever seen dirt. With that big old V8 engine, hey, it idles like a dream. No shakes, no nothing. And when you take off, like I said, step on the gas, it gets up and goes. Still shifts like a dream, too. As you can see, he's making sure God is on his side, too. He's not taking any chances. But you really aren't taking any chances if you buy a Toyota Tundra, really. Especially like him, if you buy it new. Even used, they're pretty bulletproof, but buying a new one. Other than, like I say, I'm not a fan of those V6 twin turbos that they have. Not a fan at all. There's no way they can beat these old V8s that can run forever. And obviously, they're building them fine in Texas, just like they did at Indiana. Hey, look at this thing. It's 13 years old. You'd think it just came off the showroom floor. And this is one that's been driven every day of its life in Massachusetts, summer, winter, salt, rain, you name it. They certainly got the quality control in San Antonio down pat. That's where they make all of them now. They make the Sequoias there too. They don't sell that many Sequoias. They sell a lot more of these. If you're looking for a big truck that can last forever, listen to me, get one of these Tundras. Just as I said, I'd stay away from those new twin turbo V6s till they get a chance to prove themselves. Let's see. Are you going to see a bunch of them that can go 400,000 or 500,000 miles without burning oil, being able to pull loads and stuff? And me, the verdict's out with me on that one. I like these old V8s. Trusted. And if you're looking at a used one, hey, if you can find one that's got a timing chain instead of a timing belt, even better. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Jordan 614 says, would you recommend trying the Lucas automatic transmission additive to buy time? I got no 2 Ford Ranger, 3-liter automatic tranny. It's original. It's got 214,000 miles. Sometimes I hit the gas, shudders a little. 4,000 to 5,000 RPM. I swapped the filter and put a new synthetic fluid in. It still persists, but not quite as bad as it was. Would you use Lucas automatic transmission additive? Yeah, I would. It's good stuff. It's an older vehicle. The newer ones are very touchy about the fluid, but it's an 02. It's 21 years old. Give it a try. Take a quart out, drain a quart out. You can just stick a suction in your automatic transmission dipstick hole and suck out a quart, and then put a quart of the Lucas additive in. Give it 250 miles, see if it helps. And then baby it, because I mean, hey, you got 215,000 miles. Generally, those transmissions are only good for maybe 180, 200,000. So you're on its edge of existence anyway, and it can help. It's really good for those older rear-wheel drive American transmissions. I've had people have really good luck with adding it in. So try that and give it a little pray. The only other option is to have the thing rebuilt. Since it's shorter in it, you would have to replace the torque converter too. I see a lot of these fools. They'll have a transmission rebuilt and they'll use the old torque converter and the same problems there because the torque converter's worn. You don't have to buy a new torque converter. You can buy a remanufactured one. But if you do get it remanufactured, your transmission, get a torque converter too. You really want to replace them in pairs. Well, Amanda says, my fuel pump won't build up pressure. I got a Ford Probe. When I turn the key, it doesn't build pressure. When I shut the engine off after it's been running, the pressure drops to 5 psi in about 30 seconds. What could be wrong? Generally, it means you just need a new fuel pressure regulator. The fuel pressure regulator regulates the fuel pressure. Obviously, that's what it's called. That's the cool thing about cars. Things are generally what they are called. The name explains. They have to hold the pressure too. They regulate it, but they hold it. And when they go bad, they won't hold pressure. You turn it off, pressure starts leaking back. They're supposed to hold it steady. The other thing it could be, would be a leaking fuel injector. They have to hold pressure, and if you shut it off and it goes all the way down to 5 psi, one of them is leaking. That's pretty easy to tell, because then when you start the car up, it'll smoke a little because it'll be too rich in that one cylinder where the injector's leaking. Pull out the spark plug, and if you see you got 3 perfectly clean spark plugs but one of them's black, that means that injector on the black one is leaking and you need to replace that. It's got to be one or the other. Often it's the fuel pressure regulator. Now if it was a fuel pressure regulator, it would leak fuel into the whole system, in which case all the plugs would be black and you'd know. But if only one is, that means that particular fuel injector is the one that's causing the leak down pressure. And of course, lines can get holes and leak, but you'd see that outside. You see the fuel's leaking on the line feeding it, and how you can tell is if you got 3 dirty lines and one is whistle clean, you know the whistle clean one's leaking because gasoline is a good solvent and it will clean all the dirt and crud off the line. So you see one really clean line, you know that line's leaking. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.